Hello and welcome to Satellite Dry Lake Bed Model Aircraft Flying Facility. Today we're going to do a review of the Eachines CG022 Quadcopter. It's a great little quadcopter I just got recently. I've been playing with it and I'm going to go over the high points of it. First of all, it's a well-built quadcopter, as you can see here. It's kind of a mini clone of the DJI Phantom. I think that was the intent of the design here. It does come with prop guards, which I have not installed, but if you're a beginner, you want to consider installing prop guards onto this to protect your propellers. I don't install them on mine because I like to keep this as light as possible to improve its flight performance. Other thoughts about the design of the quadcopter: uses 3.74 or 3.7 volt battery, 300 milliampere, 350 milliampere, pretty much standard for these micro quadcopters. Pretty sturdy design, feels well built and tough. Probably can take a beating, although I haven't given it much beating yet, as it's still brand new. High points on this quadcopter: the range that the quadcopter has with its transmitter is very impressive. You can fly this quadcopter out until it's a dot in the sky, probably even a little bit farther, and not lose control. I like that in a quadcopter when I see that. There's probably owes to the fact that this quadcopter uses 6 AAA batteries. That gives it the power needed to do extreme ranges. Flips. The little quadcopter flips. It's probably one of the most impressive flippers I've seen if you're into flipping a quadcopter. It's very rapid. There's no drop noted when you do the flips with this quadcopter. Other thoughts on this: the lights. It has the prettiest lights I've ever seen on a micro quadcopter, with red, green, and blue lights. It's a very impressive night flyer if you like to fly this at night. And finally, the biggie on this quadcopter: it includes headless mode. That's just unheard of, especially in a $26 quadcopter. Now, I'll go over in much more detail what headless mode means a little later in this video, but in a nutshell, what that means is you can fly this quadcopter translationally in a direction and have it rotate at the same time without any effect on the direction that you're flying. And let me just demonstrate all these properties here, and by actually doing a flight test with this quadcopter. So let's go flying it. Okay, first of all, we're going to bind the quadcopter. I inserted the battery, let it sit for a few seconds on a flat surface. You should always do that with your quadcopters before turning on your transmitter. Now, this automatically binds to the quadcopter. You don't need to do an up-down on the throttle like you see in other quadcopters, which is pretty impressive. I like that feature. So now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but you might be able to see some of these lights here in the sunlight. I'm trying to hide it in the shade here, but there's the blue and green, but there's also a red light that's kind of hard to see in sunlight here. Very pretty night flyer. Now, it has 20%, 60% mode, and 100% mode. I like to fly in 20 and 60. Both of these are very good. Today I'm going to keep it in 20% mode since there's no wind here today, and that way I can maintain control. I might take it up to 60 to show you its increased speed. 100% mode I do not recommend, because that also includes auto flipping. Auto flipping occurs if you fly the quadcopter in 100% and you give it extreme pitch in any direction or roll in any direction, it automatically flips. It's very annoying. I find that in a quadcopter. There are some other quadcopters that include that auto flip feature, but I don't recommend it. If you want to do flips, manual flips, you press this right button very quickly and then just apply pitch or roll, and then it'll flip in the direction that you want it to. Okay, as with all, I'm going to put it in 20% mode to start with. Let's go over here to the flying area. This is good enough for the flying area. I'm going to stay here. But as with all 6-axis quadcopters, I should be able to do a hand launch just by tossing it up in the air. Let's see if this can do that. And yes, it can. Very well. Okay, let's bring it back down here. Notice how that accelerated. Amazing acceleration because of the power this little quadcopter has. Okay, let me trim it a bit too. There it is. Nice little quadcopter, very, very powerful. Now let me demonstrate that acceleration again. Ready? Watch this. Full power. And let's demonstrate the range. It's still climbing and I still have control. I know you can't see this, but I'm just having a real hard time seeing it. In fact, I'm going to drop it so I can bring it back into view. I'm just letting it drop, no power. And there we go. You can stop it by giving it power on its drop. That's a quick way to bring it back down to you. That you can do with fun little quadcopter. Okay, I demonstrated range, flipping. I got to demonstrate that. Okay, let's show. Okay, I press the button. See how quickly that flips? And it doesn't lose any altitude. That's unusual. Most quadcopters can't flip like that without dropping to the ground. Great little quadcopter. Okay, range, flipping, power, lights, headless mode. Now let's talk about headless mode real quick. Headless mode, again, I mentioned it enables you to fly while applying yaw to the quadcopter and turning it. This comes in handy mainly for camera quads. If you want to do for camera quads, if you want to do panning on a subject on the ground and keep the camera on it, you need to have a ability to do that, and that's what headless mode, I guess, is primarily intended for. For this non-camera quad, headless mode comes in handy in doing what's called pirouettes. Here, I'll demonstrate it. You apply, let me trim this up a bit. You apply headless mode by holding down the right trigger button until you hear a beep. Okay, now what this does is remembers the heading that it's on as the base heading, and you can apply translational movement with pitch and roll, and it doesn't care about the yaw. So you can in effect do pirouettes. Try doing that with one of your other quadcopters that don't have headless mode, and it's almost impossible. It's like, the way I can, analogy to that is trying to pat your tummy, or rub your tummy and pat your head at the same time. It's almost impossible to do. But this does it very easily. Take it out of headless mode again. You take it out of headless mode by pressing the button again for about 1 to 2 seconds. Now, I mentioned again, headless mode again is primarily intended for, I guess, camera birds. You'd be able to apply headless mode and then pan on a subject on the ground while doing translational movement, like that. Okay, taking it out of headless mode. Let me, now, some people think that headless mode is a cheap way to do return to home. But it is not really good for return to home. The reason being this particular quad, when you press the headless mode button, it remembers the heading that it was on, and that's the one it uses for base. So in effect, if I turn it to the left like I'm doing here, and apply headless mode, and I give right bank, see? Now if I pull it back, it doesn't return to home. That's a misconception on headless mode, particularly for this bird. That would only work, say, if you got the back end pointed toward you and apply headless mode. Then it does return back to you. But as return to home, it does not work for this quad. Don't depend on that for a return to home feature on this quad. Again, primarily you want headless mode for this quad to be able to do pirouettes. And it does that very well. Okay, now let's demonstrate, let's actually look at hot maneuverability on the quad. I'm in 20% mode right now. Bring this a little closer. This quad has good maneuverability. The one thing I don't like about the maneuverability is it can be a little bit jerky. in its turning, particularly when you're applying bank turns, hard bank turns. They're not really smooth like you see on the WL toys or the UDI quadcopters. It's more of a jerky turn. But what can you expect for 26 bucks? See, I'm applying hard turns here, 20%. Let's take it up to 60% and see if that helps any. No, see? If you apply nice, slow, gradual turns, yeah, it flies great. But hard banking turns, it has a problem with those. So, okay. That's my quick review of the CG022. Overall, for $26, definite buy. Again, it's good for beginners and advanced alike. And it'll enable you to practice with headless mode if you're contemplating one for a camera quadcopter. But it's also great for playing with pirouettes if you're into pirouettes. Oh. Let me try that again. One more time. And, okay, caught it that time. And catch. Okay, CG022, Eachines, $26. My opinion, definite buy. Hope you enjoyed the review.